Welcome to Born on the Bayou Sports, a Houston sports show made for Houstonians by Houstonians. Join Tim Costello and Scott Barzilla every week as they break down the latest in Houston Astros, Rockets, and Texans news. Tim's a former minor league broadcaster, and Scott has written 2 books on the Baseball Hall of Fame. Yeah, if Javier could get it figured out, it would make things a lot easier because he was that guy everybody was counting on this year to be a Cy Young candidate, take that big step forward and help anchor this rotation with Fromber.
Since he's come to Houston, you can look at the development of guys like Carlos Correa defensively, Jeremy Pena defensively. I mean, you can Alex Bregman's, certainly I think a better than average third baseman.
And now you're putting teams in 3rd and 8, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 9. Now here comes Will Anderson. Pin back your ears, let's go. So if you're Bayou born and bred, or just like spending time in the H, sit down, relax, and stay Houston strong. Well, welcome all my friends to the show that has to acknowledge that at some point the Astros run had to come to an end.
Well, I'm hoping, Tim, this is like a 2016, just a little blip on the radar. Hopefully they'll be back in 2026.
Yeah, I'm with you. I hope this is kind of like a 2016 where you maybe realize what's missing from your roster ultimately, and this causes you to make some changes. But we can get into that. We've got a lot to get into at the end of the day, right? We've got, 7, 8 seasons of successful baseball to talk about. We've got off-season changes we want to see, maybe some we don't want to see to talk about. And we've got some Houston Texans football to talk about. But before we get into any of that, I know we're not going to have a lot of time for it later on as the show goes on. But I wanted to acknowledge my Houston Cougars. And I don't know how much of the game, if any, you watched, Scott, but Friday night they were up in the Pac-10 or whatever the fuck it's called now. They were playing at Oregon State up in Corvallis, Pac-2. And that game didn't end until about 1:30 in the morning. But it featured not 1 but 2 blocked field goals from your Houston Cougars, one of which to send the game to overtime, which UH ended up winning in overtime. And because they had blocked 2 field goals, Oregon State went for it on 4th down in overtime, didn't get it, and pretty much handed the game to the Cougars. So it brings me to my opening question, Scott, is what are some of your favorite single moment plays that you've personally witnessed in your lifetime, right? Like I'll give you an example outside of the UH one, JJ Watt's pick 6 in the playoffs, right? Just an unbelievable in itself, one play, one moment that will, forever live in infamy. Not infamy, just forever live in glory.
Well, first of all, I was watching my own game on Friday night. TCU was playing Arizona State. I'll have more to say about that game a little bit later on in our show.
So for future reference, I'll have a little insight going forward at any point if you'd like on TCU. Apparently my coworker's kid plays on the team and her nephew is the coach of the team. So one of the coaches on the team. So you little who's healthy, who's not, when you want to lay your money down on the TCU Horned Frogs, you let me know, Scott.
Insider trading. I love it. I would say the short answer, this one is an easy one, Tim, for me. I love this question. 1999. I am not a student at TCU any longer, but I was a frequent goer of games. LaDainian Tomlinson against UTEP. Would you like to guess how many yards he gained in that game, Tim?
Probably got to be close to 400.
406 with 6 touchdowns. Like every time he touched the ball, it seemed like he was going to the house. That was the single greatest performance I've ever seen in my life. He ended up being the Heisman Trophy runner-up that year. But in terms of a single moment, this one's another personal one. I want to shout out to former Horned Frog and I don't know about a friend, a guy friendly with Rick LaFavors. He was a member of the Christian fraternity, which I was kind of like uh, not a member of, but kind of friends with some of those guys. So I don't know. Do you remember did you watch any of the Cowboys game on Sunday night?
Not a single snap, Scott.
So they scored 2 points on a blocked kick, blocked extra point. Returned it the other way. Rick LaFavors intercepts a 2-point conversion try, takes it to the house for a 2-point conversion on our end. And I remember, watching the fellas on the way back to the frat house. They all game afterwards. It was just absolutely a wonderful, wonderful sight. I remember having a political science class with them, where I was practically a TA in that class. But that's a different story for a different day.
No, that's pretty cool, especially when you see the guy on a day-to-day basis. That's pretty special. I'll give you one on a baseball side of things, just because we are going to talk about some Astros stuff in this run. There's one at bat to me, I think, that stands out more than any other during this whole run. And it's not even the year that we won the World Series, but it's the 2019 ALCS walk-off home run from Jose Altuve, where literally, I was engaged to somebody else at the time, but her and her daughter were both asleep. I had to silently celebrate the fact that we were going to the World Series on a walk-off home run, off of Aroldis Chapman after we had just blown the lead. It was just an unbelievable moment during that run. So that's one to me that kind of always stood out.
I might or might not have broken a remote control watching that game after watching
fucking DJ LeMahieu.
Give up the lead. So yeah, I threw it at the TV.
All right, Scott, let's get into it. Let's talk a little Astros baseball, because I think it's better just to rip that Band-Aid right off and get into it. For the first time, realistically, since you and I started doing this podcast, the Astros are not a playoff team, right? Literally up in last week, there was the Astros were still technically, I think, the wild card team at the point that we were doing the show. And so, in the history of the show, the Astros have never been in the position we're in right now, which is sitting at home in the wild card round of October watching other teams play. So I think first and foremost, it's time to acknowledge what a great run it was, right? 4 World Series appearances, 2 World Series victories, 7 straight ALCS appearances. You had multiple 100 win seasons. You had multiple Cy Young Award winners during this time period, in the start of everything from Justin Verlander. You had some Dallas Keuchel and early on in this window. You had Garrett Cole do his thing. You had Fromber be amazing. You've turned it over to Hunter Brown now. You had Springer and Correa and Altuve and Bregman. And now you have Altuve and Correa again, right? It's been an unbelievable run.
Yeah, and I think the 2 things I want to say just off the bat is, depending on how you want to look at it, I don't know that this team faded. I don't know if this team choked. They were 6-6 in their last 12 games. That's 500 baseball, and they played 500 baseball from July on. So I don't know if this was a case of this team just completely running out of gas. It was just a case of this team, just kind of losing that momentum and other teams passing them, which is the way you want to lose. You don't want to lose because you choked. You don't want to be a New York Mets fan right now. You want to be a team that, just didn't quite have enough. And I think that describes the Astros this year.
No, I don't disagree with that at all, right? You had a winning record on the year. You're 3 wins away from having a first round bye, right? The difference between being at home and being the Mariners on a first round bye was 3 wins. So you weren't that far out of it. But at the end of the day, a lot of tight one-run games that maybe go your way don't down the stretch because Josh Hader's not there and the bullpen's not situated the way it needs to be, and Sousa's not there for the last 6 weeks, and King missed a chunk, and Okert missed a chunk, and you know things just didn't break your way this year, right? Like Jordan comes back and he's unworldly, and he's gone 5 days later. Um, Myers tries to come back and he hurts himself warming up and misses another 2 months. Zach DeZenzo gets off to a great start to the season, has some kind of injury, and then just fucking disappears into the abyss. Brendan Rodgers, I'm not complaining, but Brendan Rodgers like literally gets hit in the face with a ball in a rehab start and derails the rest of his season. Like this was just a year where it felt like a lot of the cards were stacked against you, and even getting to the point we did was an unbelievable job. But it doesn't mean that no one's without fault. And again, it doesn't mean that we can't look at possibly still finding ways to improve this baseball team this offseason. And with the way that this roster is currently, constructed, a lot of those changes are probably going to have to come from the coaching side of things, or the pitching side of things.
Yeah, and before we get there, I think you started off listing all the things that this team has accomplished over the last, I would say, decade. And to me, I think the number one thing, even though you had the scandal ended up being attached to it, that 2017 World Series where Hurricane completely, ransacks the city, and everybody's just smarting, everybody's trying to figure things out, and you pull off, rabbit out of the hat by getting Justin Verlander right before the August 31st waiver deadline, and a city that, if you save the Houston Rockets championships, which happened when I was at the end of high school, Tim. I mean, that happened my first year of college and my senior year of high school. This city, you think of what this city's known for. City's known
losing.
Up to that point, near misses. Like, oh my God, how could they pull off, losing that game? I was just thinking, like right now, watching O.J. Simpson at halftime of that 1992 wild card. I don't see how the Texans could blow it, the Oilers could blow a 28-3 halftime lead. And I was like, damn it, we just lost the game. And we exercised all those demons in 2017. All those demons, because not only did we win the series, but we won it in LA. I mean, who gave us a chance? Once you're going up 3-2 in LA, who thought, yeah, this Astros team's closing this sucker out? I mean, we've seen that before. We've seen going up 3-2 to St. Louis and blowing those two games. And that's been the history of this franchise.
Well, you decided to pitch Pete Monroe in Game 6, so that way you can go to Roger Clemens in Game 7. But that was, that was terrible. I don't disagree with you. That 2017 one will forever be special. There's a couple images that I'll never forget. One of which was like there's a family watching the game in their house that has no drywall, just studs, right? Like just the wooden studs, because everything's been ripped out, and they're sitting in camping chairs. And I mean, I still get emotional talking about it. You're still, sitting in camping chairs, just watching the game, right? And it's that team found a way to bring a city together that was hurting in a way that nothing else could have done, right? Like it had to be that moment. It had to be all those young guys putting Houston strong on the jersey. It had to be the Rangers being fucking dickheads and not letting us trade a series and giving us a little something, right? And hey, it made us spoiled, Scott. I think you and I would both agree we're pretty fucking spoiled baseball fans right now.
Oh, sure. And, and it's like everything else. I mean, I remember the Braves run of the 90s. I remember that vividly because I remember hating to face them every time we seemed to face them in the playoffs, seemingly every year. And that run came to an end because, Maddox, Glavin, Smoltz, they all got old. I mean, Chipper Jones eventually, he retired. Yeah, those things happen. And so, that we're seeing kind of the same thing with some of the guys who were young and spry in 2015 and 2016 are now aging baseball players. Father Time is undefeated.
I think there's two guys specifically who showed that more than anything this year. One of which is Jose Altuve, right? I think you really saw some age with Jose this year. Still found ways to lead the team in a lot of offensive categories, and I have a theory with Jose that I'll share a little bit later. But I definitely think we saw, an aging veteran this year when it came to Jose. And the other one is Lance, right? Like, yes, Lance has had injuries. Lance has been through a lot, but like Lance did make it back this year, and Lance pitched like shit. So I think you could fairly say that like there's a very, 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 very strong possibility that time has passed Lance McCullers by as far as being effective and being a part of a winning baseball team and providing effective innings to a winning baseball team. So, Scott, are you ready to get into
Absolutely.
keeper fire?
Absolutely.
Well, we just mentioned him. Let's start with Lance McCullers Jr. Let me give you a little bit of, I guess, the case, and then you could kind of make the choice from there, right? The case for keeping him is he's still owed a fair amount of money. He's got a decorated resume. He bleeds orange, as you've mentioned, and there were some moments this year where you thought, okay, maybe he's turning the corner. The case against Lance McCullers is he was not good on the whole this year. His best days are clearly behind him. His fastball's lost some velo, and he has trouble locating the curveball. And he's very expensive.
Well, the expensive, that's sunken cost, Tom. I mean, because who are you going to trade him to? Who in their right mind is taking Lance McCullers? And they're going to give you, that's going to be one of those syphilis for gonorrhea trades, where, their team trades you their toxic asset. So, I mean, what are you doing at that point? I'm in favor of keeping him, but on a conditional basis.
Mm-hmm.
To me, he is not penciled in any spot of your rotation. I don't think he's even penciled in your bullpen. To me, if in a perfect world, Lance would accept an assignment and say, "I'll be ready in Sugarland." I know that that's a long shot. I know that he's got pride. He's probably one of those that said, "I would rather just quit than have that happen." But I can't count on him for anything. I can hope. And the thing is if you DFA him, then that hope is gone.
Yeah. I think I'm with you that I keep Lance. The one small positive that I'm holding out for is that he has not had a quote unquote healthy offseason in a long time where he can just focus on, rest and preparation for the next year as opposed to rehabbing injuries. So, just maybe a good healthy offseason, good spring training. Do we see a little bit different Lance McCullers? I don't know. But I'm with you. If Lance McCullers is anything more than your sixth or seventh starter going into next year, things have gone terribly wrong in how you approach the offseason. I do think there's value in having a guy like that. If he accepts a middle relief role or a swing start role, a long relief role that, in a pinch he could pick up a start here or there. Okay. But yeah, I'm with you. I tend to think we might get to spring training and as rosters shake out, I have a sneaking suspicion that as camp breaks, we might get a retirement announcement.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that's where it's at.
All right, Scott, this is going to be a little bit tougher. Framber Valdez. Do you keep Framber? Do you offer a qualifying offer? Do you go a long-term offer? Let's go with, obviously, the negative was Framber was not good for a serious portion of the season, mostly coinciding when the Astros fell from first place to missing the playoffs. He had trouble communicating and getting along with a variety of catchers. And since the start of the pitch clock, he has been kind of unable to shake himself out of that bad inning. The positives with Framber, when he's right, he's as good as any pitcher in baseball. He showed it in his last start of the season of what he's capable of. He is one of the main reasons that you won the 2022 World Series. He's one of the main reasons you got to the 2021 World Series. Scott, what are you doing with Framber Valdez?
I am going to go it's conditional, Tim, on one of our other decisions down the line. To me, with current management, with who's in the dugout, no. I'm out on Framber. But if there are changes made in the dugout with somebody that is maybe a Framber whisperer, then I could see bringing him back, but it would be a year-to-year basis right now. I'm not giving him a long-term deal. That's to me is a sucker bet.
I think Framber's going to end up not getting the money he wants on the open market. That's going to open us up to a chance to get him for a one-year deal for around $30 million. I think I might accept that opportunity. The Astros are going to need starting pitching. You're going to have a good portion of your roster going to rehab visits on a weekly basis between Wesnecki, between Blanco, between Luis Garcia. That's a good chunk right there. I believe Aaron Getty's going to be getting it too. So that's 4 starters. So yeah, you're gonna need starting pitching somewhere. We've talked on our previous episode about we'd love to bring Verlander back, and hopefully you can get him on the cheap. But you're gonna need a guy who can eat high level front end of the rotation innings. And just a loose look at free agency. That guy's not really out there outside of Framber, depending how teams react to him. That might allow him to get that deal. But if he doesn't, I'd take Framber back on a $25-30 million a year, 1-year deal if he's trying to prove it and get back out in the open market after what was not really the contract year that he was looking for.
And he was the leader in innings this year. After all of that, it was him and not Hunter Brown.
Well, Hunter missed a couple starts, didn't he?
Yeah. So he's taking the ball every 5th day.
Framber doesn't miss a lot of starts. He goes 6 innings typically. But again, since the pitch clock started, he doesn't have the ability to walk around the mound and chill the fuck out that he used to have. And that leads to a blow-up inning. To me, that's a direct correlation. I'm not saying it's a causation, but there is a correlation to the last 2 years. Framber has not been as good since the pitch clock has been implemented.
Even before this season, though, I've got sources, maybe dubious sources, but I have sources that have indicated that Framber was the most hated player on the Astros. And if that's the case, this might be addition by subtraction.
We shall see. That's interesting because he was part of that Latin group of pitchers that all seemed to very much get along between him and Garcia and Christian Javier and Urquidy. That was a core group.
Dubious source. It could be a dubious source. I'm fully admitting that.
Okay, interesting. All right, Scott. Next one, and I know you can't see this, but I've got images. I put a lot of work into this. Images for every player here. The next one is Christian Walker. Tough one here, as you're going to have a bit of a logjam somewhere around the infield next year, right? Paredes and Correa, both typically third baseman. Paredes can play second. Paredes can play first. There's decisions to be made. Walker was not quite as advertised this year. I think the defense was good, not great. I think the power was good, not great. I think the strikeout level, the strikeout level was definitely up this year. The line drive percent was down this year. The barrel rate was down this year. Had a really, really bad start to the season. Was okay after that, but I think he would tell you this was not his best year. I think he led the team in RBIs. He led the team in home runs. But again, I think a little bit more was expected out of him than what you got. I don't think this was the sky is falling season. This was, I don't think this is a scenario of a choke and a contract. I don't think it was anything like that. I just don't think he was what a lot of fans thought Christian Walker would be. I think you and I had maybe a little bit more realistic expectation for Christian Walker. I don't think he, other than, some of the on base percentage numbers and strikeout numbers, was far off of that. But I think home run wise and RBI wise, he was right in where you and I thought he'd be. But looking at roster construction for next year, do you look at trading a Christian Walker and try and bring in a middle of the rotation starter, a third or fourth guy who can give you 160 to 175 innings of 3.5, 4 ERA baseball?
Well, ideally, yeah, but I don't think you're getting that for Walker. I think that Walker is going to be one of those, you take on $10 million and we'll give you this 29-year-old A-ball pitcher, now my feelings on Walker is that if you look at his K numbers, he was normally sitting at about 22, 23% for most of his career. He went up to 29% this year. It's a huge jump. So this kind of fall into another conversation later on in one of these, keep them or leave them. But why did that number jump? Did that number jump because he's in his mid-30s and he's starting to lose it? Did it jump because it was just a bad year and it's one of those things? Or did it jump because we've got some bad coaching situation going on? It's hard to know that right off the bat. Because, looking at the rest of his numbers, he's not swinging excessively at pitches out of the zone. He's not. He's fairly selective. It's just there's a lot of swing and miss in that game. And I don't know why that is.
To me, the thing that's alarming, Scott, is a good chunk of that swing and miss came on the fastball this year. Walker, with some of that real high velo, really seemed to struggle. Really struggled against the fastball, and I think that's where some of the strikeout numbers really increased, was his inability to catch up to some of that high leverage heat. That's maybe why I'm a little bit more willing to let him go. I have minimal problems with Walker this year. I think he was streaky. I think there's a good chance next year's similar to this year. I think he probably hits between 25 and 30 homers. I think he's a 235 to 240 hitter. I think maybe he walks us. I literally think he could run it back this year for Christian Walker and probably get pretty similar results next year.
Yeah, I think when you're looking around for teams to go to, there's two scenarios that I can think of. There's the teams which honestly could give a shit about money, that they're loaded. And so they potentially have holes at first base, / people they'd want to DH. Like, I'm sure the Yankees are going to let Goldschmidt go. So, could they want to they have Rice, but could they DH Rice and send, put Walker at first base? Maybe. You got Tristan Casas in Boston, who can't seem to stay healthy. And he's been a kind of a malcontent. Could, they potentially trade for him? But to me, you're not getting anything of value for him. I think we can set that aside. About the best that you can hope for is you could hope for maybe a starting pitcher who struggled last year, who's maybe getting some money, and the team wants to get out from under that contract and says, sure, we'll swap bad contracts. Because the other side of it is a team that has nothing to play for and wants to get out from under the commissioner's nose on having a payroll that's too low, and somebody like a Pittsburgh or Colorado. But do you want to be seen in the baseball landscape to players as a team that'll do that to a player?
No, I don't think you do, because you've got a fair amount of money to spend this offseason, and you're going to be trying to recruit some big name players, hopefully, and revamp this thing. And I think, for the most part, the Astros are known as a first class organization. And I think you'd like to keep that way if you're trying to bring new players in and keep this proverbial window open a little bit longer. Yeah, I don't like the idea of sending him to a Pittsburgh or Colorado. I think maybe the Reds might be interesting. That snuck into the playoffs at the very end. Maybe they make a little bit of
Yeah.
noise and
Oh, okay.
need a power bat, something like that. I don't know. I think there's decisions to be made around the Astros infield, but also there's a strong possibility, as we've mentioned, that hey, maybe Paredes is your everyday second baseman next year. Correa plays third base, and Altuve is your DH and left fielder, and Jordan is the other DH and left fielder, and they rotate those guys, and that's how they do it. I could very well see that becoming a strong possibility next year, and for Altuve's sake, I think it's probably the best thing for him to be the DH.
Yeah, if you could. I don't know that. Wow. I mean, I don't know that they have a stomach for Alvarez in left field. I don't know if they have that stomach. I mean, based on what I've seen, he doesn't play a bad left field.
He's
not
fine.
He's not a horrible left fielder. It's just
take injuries out of it, Scott. Ninth inning of a game. You have to have one of these two, right? Like there's no defensive substitution to come in. Do you want Jordan Alvarez in left field, or do you want Jose Altuve in left field?
Shit, I want you in left field over Altuve. I mean,
I'd like to think I'd give you a good 3 outs.
I mean,
but no,
as they used to say to him, I mean, he runs good routes out there. They just can't seem to get the ball to him.
But no, I just think the less that Altuve plays left field, the happier that everybody will be.
But I think on a thought experiment level, that's probably going to end up making sense. And sadly, Paredes might be more marketable if you're looking, to fix that logjam.
I totally agree with you on that. However,
I don't want to do it.
And I'm not trading. Paredes is untouchable to me. He's still controllable. He's still young. He's exactly what the Astros were looking for. And he's one of the few guys who, lived up to expectations this season offensively. I don't see a world in which that guy can go anywhere.
Yeah, I agree. I'm just saying, when you start gaming this out, because I just don't see a taker for Walker.
That's fair.
If Walker were good this year, if he had hit 35 bombs, of course, if he had hit 35
but also let's remember this. If this team's healthy, Walker's your 6th or 7th hitter. Are you comfortable with a guy who hits 240 with 30 bombs in your 7th slot next year? Because that doesn't sound too bad to me.
Hell yeah. I have no problems with Walker just in a vacuum. I think your problem is just you're looking around, you're like, we need to reshape this thing. And you start looking around and you start pointing fingers. Oh, can't trade this guy. Can't trade this guy. Can't trade this guy. And you're kind of stuck.
I think Walker's a guy you'd want to be able to trade, but if you can't, with the right coaching around him, I think he's a guy in the right spot of the lineup that you're happy with. I think he got pushed into a lot of high leverage at bats this year because of the injuries that we had. He shouldn't have never been hitting 4th. He's not a cleanup hitter. It's not who he is. But again, if that's your 6th or 7th hitter, you're happy. We had no problem when Colby Rasmus hit 6th or 7th and put up similar numbers. We loved him for it. So, and then the next year when we brought him back and he had to hit 4th or 5th and he was still Colby Rasmus, everybody's like, this guy sucks. So, at the end of the day, he was not as good the next year, but still, like, he was never the guy you're going to put in the middle of your lineup. Colby Rasmus was a guy who swings for the fences and he had a good year doing it. But that doesn't mean that anything changes about who he is. Christian Walker is a guy who has holes in his swings. Christian Walker is a guy who's never hit for a high average. He is a guy who's got pop. He is a guy who has the ability to drive in runs, and he's a guy who plays a pretty good first base. I noticed a difference in Pena this year versus the last 2 years. I noticed a difference overall in the infield defense this year over the last 2 years. Those things don't go unmentioned.
No, and I think the next guy that you're about to throw up on the pitcher slide, I'm guessing.
I have no more players.
Oh, you're not going to throw up Yiner?
Oh, I do need to talk about Yanner, but I forgot to grab a picture.
Okay, so we're talking about Yiner is the exact same question as Walker. This guy, his approach to hitting, well, Walker's approach to hitting is not bad.
Walker has an approach. Yanner has no fucking approach.
But the question is the same in that what's going to create better performance? Are they who they are, or does different coaching, different team philosophy bring out a better version of him? Because, something funny happened to him. I looked up his numbers. Defensively, he actually rebounded. He was actually +1 in defensive runs saved and right around level at the other, the Fangraphs defensive numbers. Now, he was minus 3.5 in framing runs, but guess what's happening, folks?
That's going away.
That's going away. So,
well, not necessarily totally. You get like a certain amount of challenges per game. So there is some.
Right.
You can't challenge every pitch, right? Like there is some ability.
Right. But my point is that that's going away eventually. So defensively, Yiner doesn't bother me all that much. It's that approach to hitting. That has got to be fixed. He's swinging at nearly 60% of all pitches. That's just far and away the highest rate on the Astros. I mean, he makes Altuve look selective.
And of that 33, like of that swing rate that he has, like half of it is not strikes.
Oh, no. Actually, more than
like
half.
67% is out of the strike zone, yeah. I think it is.
Yeah, because he's got over a 40%, which again is ridiculously high. The league average is around 30%. And he's swinging at over 40% of pitches outside the zone.
It's insane. And so with Yiner, I'm in a trade scenario because of the position that he plays and the numbers that he put up this season. He hit above 250. He hit the 20 homers. I think you could get a nice enough piece that I'm fine letting that go.
And I think there are going to be more teams that would be in on that than Walker.
I agree.
Because number one, every team needs two catchers, versus one first baseman, really. And catcher just doesn't have as many guys that are going to produce those kinds of numbers. So then, the question becomes, which team could you dangle him to? I talked earlier, wrote an article about getting Adley Rutschman. I don't think the Orioles make that trade straight up. I think the Orioles, if they're trading Rutschman, it's because they're thinking that young catcher they signed is their guy. But there's always, a 3-team kind of trade or separate. We're going to trade Yiner for this piece, and then we're going to make a separate deal with Baltimore to bring in Rutschman.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Rutschman would be a fun piece to try for a year or two. I think re-signing Caratini and running Caratini and Salazar is a reasonable option for a year or two until the catcher that you have yourself down there in the minor leagues it's ready to go is an option. Salazar calls a fine game. He's terrible offensively. I think Victor Caratini is. I wouldn't mind seeing his numbers played out across like 130 games and then throwing 120 games behind the plate, throwing a little DH time his way, and the rest go to Salazar.
Yeah, I wouldn't be bad. I was looking up their numbers because I was planning an article in the future on the catching system. I'm going to evaluate every position, but I love the hard hit rate here, Tim. So you want to guess where Yiner and Caratini are in hard hit rate? They're about the same, actually. I'll give you that clue.
Yeah.
Do you want to take a stab where that is?
For Caratini?
For Caratini and Yiner, since they're about the same.
Caratini's hard hit rate is, I don't know, 70%.
No, that would be like Ruthian numbers. See, they're a little over 40. Like Jordan's at 50%, and he's like, that's ridiculously high. But Salazar, for his career, because he hasn't played a lot of baseball, 13% hard hit rate.
Yeah, not great. But I mean, Caratini and Yainer are basically the same player offensively. I feel like maybe Caratini's actually a little bit better because he's willing to take a walk and has more of an approach at the plate. But we just have never seen a full season of Caratini behind the plate, so I think the power could be similar to what Yainer gives you. I think Caratini could give you 15 to 20 bombs. I don't think that's outrageous. I think he could hit just for the same average, and I think he walks more.
Yeah, his swing rate on balls outside the zone is about that league average 30%. I mean, so
at this point, league average would be wonderful.
Exactly. And Salazar's approach isn't bad either. He's just more of a punch and Judy hitter. He's a punch and Judy hitter. But
he's got great strategy, but the execution's really the problem.
Yeah, he has what I call a loft problem. Yeah.
All right. That's all the players I have. Let's do coaches. This one's going to be the easiest one we do. Alex Introm. Adios, amigo. I think there's people who would argue for, injuries or whatever, but I think you and I would both agree that the offensive approach of this team has been bad regardless of injuries. I think that situational hitting, I think, is the best way to judge a team as far as what their approach is, right? The Astros with bases loaded, nobody out, are garbage. The Astros leave a small village on base on a night in and night out basis. They abandon more villagers than Christopher Columbus himself. They are abysmal situations. They are abysmal with runners on third. They are abysmal with runners on base. They show no ability to step up with runners on base. They literally have like the same average with bases empty and runners on base. I've seen regression from Jose Altuve. I've seen regression from Bregman when he was here. I've seen regression from Yordan Alvarez in some ways. I've seen regression from Yainer. I've seen multiple players be very good hitters elsewhere and then come here and go over 28 for one stretch, Jesus Sanchez. I've seen Jose Abreu come here and just lose the ability to play baseball. I've seen Christian Walker come here and have a down year. I'm not blaming all of this simply on Cintron, but I am saying that at some point when there's this much circumstantial evidence, like where there's smoke, there's fire.
What I will say, Tim, is we've been having discussions behind the scenes at Crawfish Boxes, and some of those folks, not all of them, but some of those folks are staunch defenders of these two hitting coaches. And the two cases they're citing over and over again is Jeremy Pena and Jake Myers. Absolutely, those two players have been better. There's no denying that they're better hitters in 2025 than they were before. Absolutely. But see, here's the thing. And this is not a situation where you're firing David Culley. When we had Lovie Smith as our coach, there were players on the defense who were better players for Lovie Smith than they were for D'Amico Ryans. Because there are going to be, coaches that are going to jive better with certain players than other players. And I'm not saying these coaches are not just completely inept and know nothing. I mean, they're not David Culley's out there. However, the overall product has gotten steadily worse. This is not just a season. In a case, Tim, where, 2022, we're great. 2023, we're great. 2024, we're great. And in 2025, we're shit. It hadn't been that way. 2022 was pretty good, but pitching was better than the hitting. You would agree with that, right, Tim?
Yeah, I would agree.
2023, still the offense is pretty good, but a little bit worse. 2024, we're seeing definite signs of slippage. And then everything just fell to crap this year. And you can blame injuries, and that's fine. But the overall team approach, which you spoke of, speaks more volumes than, was it Taylor Trammell or was it Jake Myers? Was it Jacob Melton or was it Jake Myers? Was it, what was his name? Zach Short. Was it Zach Short or was it Jeremy Pena? Was it Brendan Rodgers or was it, Jose Altuve? Anything you want to go on down the line. When this team came up with runners in scoring position, my thought was, don't hit into a double play. Don't hit into a double play. Don't hit into a double. No whammies. No whammies. No whammies. No whammies. No whammies. Oh, shit.
I mean, how many times with the bases loaded we go, well, at least we got one, right?
Yeah.
Like, could have been worse. Could have, been strikeout, double play. I said it was double play, then strikeout. So we got one. Like, it's just, hey, I'm sure he's a nice guy. Whatever. You are not, in my opinion, the person to lead this offense going forward. We have thoughts on who that should be.
Oh, I think you and I have thrown two names that we would immediately throw at the top. My first one, actually, if I were preferring between the two, is Michael Brantley. The second one, Lance Berkman. But to me, Michael Brantley, I think, was a better technical hitter. Probably knew more about the science of hitting. Maybe didn't get by on quite as much physical talent as Lance Berkman. But I still think Lance Berkman knows a lot about hitting. So
I'd like to see him hired in tandem, personally.
Yeah. And we're going to get there, but I would like to see a triumvirate, Tim. That we could, put
Brad
in.
Auspis?
Jim Pankovitz. No, not going to go Brad Auspis.
We are bringing in Mitch Molesky as the Astros' new hitting coach.
He's the new bullpen coach.
Sean Barry, come on down.
No, in all seriousness, you're going to get to the next name, but I am not replacing the pitching coaches.
No, they're not on here.
I think they did a pretty good job. I am not.
And there's two names why, right? I think number one, Jason Alexander is prime example of why our pitching coaches continue to be some of the best in the league. This is a guy that's been cast away by how many places this year, right? And you found a way to get some of his best stuff out of him. And then example number two is Colton Gordon. Like, you sent Colton Gordon out there a lot and found ways to get competitive innings out of Colton fucking Gordon and win games and get the most out of him.
And Brandon Walters and Sousa.
Brandon Walters too.
And Sousa and Brian King and Caleb Ort and, all of these guys that know. But I was going to say that because I know you got Joe Espada on your list.
He's next. Are you ready for it?
Yeah, I only have one scenario where I would get rid of him. And that scenario would be a Berkman, Brantley, Maldonado triumvirate. Maldonado as bench coach.
I don't mind it.
Because then I think I could see bringing Frommer back because he was kind of a Frommer whisperer, if you will. So
I think I like Berkman. I don't want him as my manager. I like him more as a coach, right? So as Berkman's, I'd actually swap those with Berkman more as my bench coach and Maldonado as the manager.
I could see it.
I think the trend in baseball right now a little bit is to kind of take that catcher as soon as they retire and put him right in the dugout managing, right? We saw it with
Kevin
Cash. The Guardians have Voit manning the helm for them. And the guy knows the pulse of the game. You can't argue with me that Maldonado doesn't understand the pulse of the game. You can't argue with me that Maldonado's not prepared from a data perspective to give those insights to whoever needs them. There's no question to me that he's able to do that job. I don't know if he wants it, but I'm at least picking up the phone and having that conversation. But let's talk about Joe Espada, because I think you mentioned that there's very limited scenarios where you would not like to keep Joe. Let's talk about what the reasons why keeping him makes sense, right? He's had some pretty injury-plagued first two seasons. When you look at how much time Kyle Tucker missed last year, you look at how much time Altuve missed to start the year. You look at how much time Jordan missed just really just everybody this year. How much time the entire 27 people who went on the IL missed this year. I think in total it was about 18 WAR that was missing from
Yeah.
the roster this year. So you look at all those extenuating circumstances, and you say you still were better than 500. You won your Division I game, and you missed out by the playoffs by a tiebreaker the next year. But then I look at the other side of things, and I say you got off to a terrible start last year. And while you did go on an unbelievable run, you were bounced in the first 2 games of the playoffs. I look at some of the bullpen usage this year, where you really possibly over-relied on Abreu and Hader to get more than 3 outs pretty often. And we saw Hader get hurt, and we saw Abreu basically run out of gas at the end of the year. We saw some interesting lineups from Espada. Does not stick with a steady lineup and make some questionable, maybe defensive decisions on things. But I think overall, if you tell me that there's 16 managers better than Joe Espada, I think I'd have to ask you to name them.
No, and what I was going to say is this is not a situation where you fire him and go on a managerial search. I mean, there's guys.
If you don't have a name in mind, then why would you fire him?
Yeah, there are guys that if there were an open managerial slot, there are guys that are available on the open market I would definitely want to interview. I definitely would want to interview Rocco Baldelli. He's definitely a guy I would interview. I would interview Bob Melvin. I'd interview him. I'd interview
Has been.
Yeah, I mean
he couldn't get it done with a stacked San Diego Padres roster.
No, but the
had
Giants
a pretty good team with the Giants this year.
But they were not stacked.
But the Padres were.
Yeah, the Padres were. There are guys that I would definitely interview. But there isn't a guy sitting out there right now available who I'm sitting there thinking that guy's better than Joe Espada. No, there's not that guy. Now, here's my question, Tim. Now, I think Maldonado would jump at a chance to manage. I think he would, because I think his baseball career is over. I think he has to know that.
He's announced that this is his last ride. He announced that he's done.
So I think he would do it. The question I would have, though, is more about Brantley and Berkman. Would they be willing to come on as hitting coach, bench coach?
I don't know. And this is also, let's be honest, this is pure speculation on Scott and I's perspective,
sure.
Right?
Sure.
There has been nothing from these guys that said like, hey, Astros, we're just like in a dream world. I'd love to have Michael Brantley teaching these fuckers how to hit, because Michael Brantley never went up to an at-bat without a plan in his mind, right? Like, I don't think you ever saw, at least in Houston, I didn't watch a ton of his Cleveland time, but in Houston, you never saw Michael Brantley go up there without, here's what I'm trying to do here, right? He can pitch me. He can do what he wants to do. But in this at-bat, I'm trying to hit the ball hard to the right side on the ground. If it gets through, it gets through. If I get a pitch, I can elevate in the air. Great. But long story short, I'm trying to hit the ball hard to the right side. That's what I'm up here to do. There was never an at-bat that he went up there without that plan. So from that perspective, I'd love to have a guy who not only knows the technical aspects of the swing, but can just have a fucking plan of attack. Then you've got a guy like Lance Berkman who has played really all 3 outfield spots. He's played first base. He's DH'd. He can hit from both sides of the plate. He's as close to being a Hall of Famer as you can be without being in the Hall of Fame, in my opinion. Like I could make the argument that he is the second best switch hitter to play the game outside of Mickey Mantle. I can make that argument. It may not be a winning argument, but when you look at some of his like isolated power numbers, the argument can be made that he was up there with the fucking Mick. So if you don't listen to that guy, you're a moron. Again, Lance Berkman was a manager at HCU, Houston Christian University now. Didn't quite go his way, but also like a major leaguer trying to manage kids doesn't always go your way. So that's why I don't necessarily want him in the manager spot. I'm more interested in him as the bench coach, or a combination of hitting coaches between he and Brantley. But I do think that it would be a very specific scenario that ends up with Joe Espada losing his job. And I think just to keep in line with that, as we move on to our next person, that scenario starts with Dana Brown losing his job. I think if Dana Brown stays, Espada stays. But I do think, while not on the hot seat, I do think that there's a non-zero chance that Dana Brown's not the GM of the Astros going forward.
Yeah, and I think it's jumping off the horse way too soon. Organizations that are, killing guys even before 5 years at the GM spot, that worries me. What I will say is I don't have a Rolodex of hitting coaches in my brain. I'm not one of those,
I'm just going to go through former players who are good hitters and be like, this guy should do it.
I'm not one of those idiot savants that, oh, yeah, there's this guy in the Brave system that's a great – I don't know those people. But I think at the hitting coach stage, you're in the interview stage. You're in the get rid of these guys. Let's bring in a group of guys we want to interview and pick the best guy. Or guys, if you want to go with that tandem system. But, yeah, Dana Brown, how much control does he have? I mean, we still don't know that.
That's a good question. And I think I'm 100% with you that it would be way too early to lose Dana Brown. I think you can possibly look at the decision he made this trade deadline to not get an arm or two and circle that and be like, what the hell? And I think that's fair. But also his reasoning for why he didn't was also fair, right? Like he goes, I've got McCullers coming back. I've got Luis Garcia coming back, and I've got Christian Javier coming back, right? Like, and then at that point, I've got 7 starters.
And Arrighetti at that point.
And Arrighetti, right? So I think maybe McCullers already back. So the 3 were Arrighetti, Garcia, and
Javier.
So that, and rightfully thinking at some point I'm going to have 8 starters. That's going to help the bullpen. I can understand what his thought process was there. You and I both said, hey, we would have liked another high leverage arm here. But based on the mandate of number 1, don't spend past that tax threshold. And number 2, the arm wasn't there. We were like, okay, I get it. You loaded up on what you could get, which was bats. The offense fucking sucked. Hey, I get it. Go get some bats. So from that perspective, I don't think you can hold him accountable too much for the fact that he didn't get an arm. I do think you can hold him accountable for not getting more arms in the off-seeding leading up to 2025. You and I both were questioning of that, knowing that, hey, these guys were coming off the IL in late July, early August. I think he put way too much trust in our training staff and thought that these guys would be ready to pitch. I think whatever institutional failures that happened with the training staff do have to fall on somebody, though. And if, maybe that's Dana Brown, maybe that's the case. But outside of everybody in the training staff being fired, is there something that Dana Brown should be held accountable for saying, why did we rush players back this year?
Well, and I think from a long-term perspective, the smart play would have been trading Fromber in the offseason. However, there are 2 huge caveats there. Number 1, is Jim Crane going to allow you to deal Fromber? Because dealing Fromber and Kyle Tucker in the same offseason means white flag, we surrender. And I don't know that that's ever going to be in Jim Crane's.
But would it, though? At the end of the day, the hindsight's 2020. Trading Kyle Tucker is 100% the right move. You got the players you need, and you could argue that Paredes outplayed Tucker this year when you look at the whole season.
Well, no, and I'm saying perception. Because
perception for sure.
And Crane's going to be about perception. But the other caveat is we don't know what was offered for Fromber. So we know that the Kyle Tucker deal is a really damn good deal. And we were saying it at the time, not even knowing what Cam Smith was going to be, if he was going to be anything at the big league level. We were saying it, hey, Paredes is a nice bat. Hey, Wisniewski's a nice, fringe rotation arm. Now it turns out Wisniewski gets hurt, but Paredes was what he was advertised to be, and Cam Smith was more than what he was advertised to be. I don't think it doesn't sound like there was a similar deal out there for Fromber. But if you could have gotten, let's say, one major league player and one good prospect, would you have done it?
Hindsight being 2020, probably. But I was in the camp of I still thought going into the year you had a playoff team. You needed 91 wins to win this division, Scott, right? I think 91 was the final total.
Yeah.
So again, this was a 91 win roster healthy. I don't think that's an argument. But not like based on the number one, the levels of success the Astros have had, you and I would both agree that like 91 wins doesn't really feel like a great season sometimes when you've won 105 games. Like 91 feels like, man, we really played around with some teams we shouldn't have played around with. We made this closer than it should have been. So like, yeah, we were probably a 91, 92 win team when all healthy. I think that would have been our max, which would have won the division.
I think he is in the pre-Harden Daryl Morey kind of swamp where you're living at 40, 41, 42 wins.
Yeah.
And the owner's saying you're not tanking. And so, and I think this owner's saying the same thing. You're not tanking, but we're not going to spend like the Dodgers and Mets. And it's like, okay, so we're spending what we're spending now, but I can't trade aging veterans. And I can't, what do you want me to do? I mean, and that's kind of where this offseason is too, there's tweaks that you can make to this team, but without either gutting it or spending money, I don't know what major changes can be made.
The money can be spent this year, right? Without the same penalties now that the reset has happened and you can go above that threshold without worrying about being a multiple repeater. You've got money coming off the books. I'd like to see Dana ride this out. I really do. I think he's a good developer of minor league talent. And I think I talked about it maybe 1 or 2 shows ago, but the foresight to sign the collection of guys like a Cooper Hummel, like a Zach Short, like a Trammell, who they're not key pieces to championship teams, but they're key parts of tough stretches in your season. Taylor Trammell is a 225 hitter. That's great. That's about what he is. But for a stretch this year, Taylor Trammell was one of your better players and kept things going in a positive direction when you needed a guy. When all of your infielders were hurt, Zach Short played a quality starting shortstop for you. As frustrating as he was, Cooper Hummel filled the role for a little bit. And finding guys like that and storing them in AAA is something that I do have to give Dana Brown credit for, because I don't feel like Jeff Luhnow or Click did those things. Like, I don't remember seeing deals like that at the beginning of spring training where you could almost stash quadruple A level players at AAA just in case. Do you?
No, and those teams might have been in a different scenario where maybe they didn't need that as much.
Fair.
But you are where you are right now. And so in order for us to get to that 90-win plateau, we're going to have to make some shrewd deals. We really can't have any missteps. And do you want to change horses now, where now you're going to spend the next, 2, 3, 4 weeks trying to hire a guy? Then you spend the next 2, 3, 4 weeks him trying to get a staff together. And then he's going to try and figure out another, month or two to figure out, okay, who do I want to keep? By then the offseason's over. I don't think October is the time to make this. This is why you see teams, I think, almost exclusively fire a GM during the season, because October, November is the worst time to bring in a new general manager, because you got all these decisions that need to be made and you don't have anybody there to make the decisions.
No, you're absolutely right. All right, we got to move on. We spent a lot of time on the Astros, and we still got to talk about some Texans stuff, Scott. So let's keep this train moving. We'll quickly touch on the Texans. I want to go to let's start off with what you discussed last week, the levels of suck, right? We had four four names that we were looking at through this lens, right? We were looking at CJ Stroud. We were looking at D'Amico Ryans. We were looking at Nick Caley, and we were looking at Nick Caserio through the lenses of suck. Texans shut out the Titans. They allow only 175 total yards, no red zone trips, have only allowed 51 points through 4 games. Where does that put these 4 names on that scale of suck for you?
Oh, I just posted this article today, Tim, on Battle Red Blog. I'm going to say one person's stock went way up and one person's stock actually went down. And I'm guessing you didn't read the article, so
Not yet.
So D'Amico Ryans, his stock goes way up, in my opinion, and not even for the result of the game. Because I don't know if you heard this, Tim, but he gave play calling duties to Matt Burke.
I did see that.
And it's like, thank God, because to me, there was a rumor that, or a story from an unnamed source, that when Gerard Johnson was doing his exit interview last year, he was telling D'Amico some of the stuff that were going on in the offensive coaches meetings, and D'Amico went off on him, going like, "Why didn't you tell me any of this stuff was happening?" That's a horrible look for a head coach. That is a horrible look for a head coach. And we're going down that road again to start the season where it's like after 3 weeks, I do the defense. Here's this new guy. I'm going to trust that he does the offense. At least he had the presence of mind and said, nope, I'm not doing that shit anymore. I'm going to take a step back from the defense and I'm going to oversee what's going on because I want to see where this offense is breaking down. I want to see if it's a leadership issue. I want to see if it's player issues, if it's, assistant coaches under Nick Caley, at least at the end of the year when he's doing exit interviews, he's not going to blow up at a guy going like, "You didn't tell me."
No, I agree. Couldn't agree more. I think that move was huge for D'Amico, and I think the defense may have even looked a little bit better under Matt Burke than it did under D'Amico.
Let's consider the opponent, though.
I do. I agree with you that the Titans may be the only offensive play calling team that's worse than the Houston Texans. I saw some phenomenal statistics that compared Will Levis to Cam Ward, and he's worse than Will Levis was right now through 4 games this season versus Will Levis through 4 games last year. And you spent the number 1 overall pick. I don't think all that's on Cam Ward. I think the offensive line there is terrible, and that's why I don't think you can truly change your opinion on CJ Stroud based on his performance. And I don't think you can change your opinion of Nick Caley based on his performance. But I do think there's something that you're getting to is based on the general performance of this game and the way this roster has gone through some of the moves that have made after this game. Nick Caserio's stock is falling fast.
Well, there's 2 things, Tim. Number 1, I don't care if you tell me what's going on. I don't care. You don't owe me an explanation about Joe Mixon. However, you in the building know, or you should have known, that he's going to be out for much of the season, if not the whole year. And you need to plan accordingly. And we've seen this over and over again. I'm going to install Kenyon Green as my left guard, and I'm just going to assume it all goes to plan. I'm going to bring in Nick Chubb, who's coming off of horrible knee injuries, and Dameon Pierce, who's for 2 years has been a ghost, and a rookie in the 4th round. I'm just going to assume it all goes to plan. Now, the fact that Woody Marks looked great on Sunday
bails them out.
Number 1, I don't know how good the Titans defense is. Number 2, you can't be rewarded for dumb luck. I'm sorry. That's just not how this works. But the other thing I think you were mentioning is Cam Robinson, we signed him to $12 million, which most of that was converted into signing bonus, traded to the Browns for a 2027 pick swap between the 6th and 7th round.
You paid like $10 million to swap a late round pick. Congratulations, Nick.
Yeah, and so to me, the Mixon thing, because if you're a conference title, if you think this is our year to go to the conference championship game, are you going to leave a position like starting running back where it's like, I hope it works?
And especially in a situation where Mixon is the guy that made the offensive line look better on the run game, right? It wasn't like we're one of those Kubiak teams where you could put anybody back there and the holes are so big you and I could run through them. Like Mixon was creating those yards for himself last year.
Yeah, out for blue. And so we talked about this. We talked about was it Brian Robinson?
Yeah.
He was gotten for, what was it, a 5th rounder or 6th rounder?
I think it's 6th.
Could you have afforded a 5th? You think?
No, you absolutely could have.
And so I love the people.
You absolutely could have.
The commenters are like, well, what could you have done? Well, that was one thing you could have done. You also have guys available right now like Breece Hall, who seems to have fallen out of favor in New York, and New York is going nowhere and fast. They're going to be, you interested in Alvin Kamara?
Yeah, I would be interested in Alvin Kamara, but
that's another.
Not at that, the price depends on all of that.
Well, but I think at this point, Alvin Kamara is an aging back who probably doesn't have a whole lot left. So to me, I wouldn't trade more than a 5th or 6th rounder for Alvin Kamara because the Saints are just looking to get him off the books.
Yeah, that's true. Scott, I think it's going to be a short Texans segment this week just because we went so long on the Astros. Let's get some awards away. I know next week will probably give us a little bit more time to talk Texans as we're strictly into Astros off season here. But let's move on to award season. Scott, we might overlap a little bit on some of these, but we'll do our best as they get filled out at different times. Scott, who do you have for your pal right in the kisser?
I might pivot on not this one, but the next one to kind of give us some air here.
Okay.
But I am going to go with the Big 12 officials because while you were watching the U of H Oregon State game, I was watching the TCU Arizona State game. Now, a couple of things I should say about this game. Arizona State gained like nearly 500 yards and TCU gained like 275, 280. So when I'm looking at the end result from a vacuum from 64,000 feet, I'm saying like, yeah, Arizona State should have won that game. They were the better team on the field for much of the game, but TCU did, get up and they were up big and we were up 24-17, 4th down here in the 4th quarter, incomplete pass. So what happens on 4th down when it's incomplete, Tim?
5th down.
5th down. But this is where the officials and everybody's celebrating. And then it's like about 3 minutes later. No. Wait. We got pass interference on TCU. So they gives them 1st down. Then we have another situation where we're not quite to 4th down, but we've got them, we've got them where they can't seem to move at yardage again. Oh, no. Wait. We got roughing the passer. Now, were those good calls? I don't know, but I know what looks bad. What looks bad is whenever you sit there and you sit around in your hands for 2 or 3 minutes, and then all of a sudden go, oh, no, we have a flag. No, that's bullshit. You eat your whistle at that point. If you don't have the stones to make a call at the time, you got to eat your whistle. Referees should not be deciding. It was like the worst game I'd ever seen since the LSU A&M game several years ago, where A&M turned it over like 3 times in their final drive, and the referees kept going, no, wait, it was incomplete. No, we got a flag on LSU. No. And it's like, come on. Let's just, if I were TCU at that point, or if I was LSU in that game, I would have just walked out the field and said like, okay, A&M, you win. The officials obviously want you to win. So there you go. All right, Arizona State, you win. The officials obviously want that to happen. So, go ahead, take it. Still a hard-fought 27-24 game, but gosh, I hate it when the Zebras make it for you.
No, I couldn't agree more. Inserting yourself into the game like that is just so damn frustrating and really no place for it in a lot of these high-leverage games. I am going to go with the hometown team here, the Texas fucking Rangers. Scott, the reason we were out of the playoffs is because the Rangers couldn't throw fucking strikes with the bases loaded, and a bases loaded hit by pitch is what knocked the Houston Astros out. I'm not saying it wouldn't have happened later on in the game. I'm not saying it wouldn't have happened regardless, but I am saying that the Astros specifically lost a chance to be in the playoffs because the Rangers lost a game by hitting a Guardians player with a pitch with the bases loaded. Now, if that's not the most Houston way to get knocked out of the playoffs, I don't know what is.
Well, let me add a little bit of context to that, Tim. It was 2 outs to start the inning, so they loaded the bases with 2 outs and then plunked a guy.
Yeah.
An intentional walk to load the bases, by the way.
Yeah, that too. Yeah. A whole lot of fucking suck went into that one. So yeah, I'd like to punch them right in the kisser, Scott.
So
all right.
I'm gonna pick the same one, but I'm gonna go for a different reason. Because I was gonna go with that reason. I'm gonna go with the Texas Rangers because they showed Bruce Bochy the door. Now they're gonna couch it by sitting there saying like, "Oh, we agreed," and all this.
I thought he showed himself the door.
But basically what's happening is the Rangers, they can't afford to be a competitive baseball team. They're gonna have to cut salary, I think. I don't know. Would you like to maybe trade for Jacob deGrom? Maybe
I think their $1 billion infield is probably going to get broken up a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that we can really find a spot for Marcus Semien or Corey Seager, but okay. But this is a guy that won the World Series, just a little over a year ago, and he's getting shown the door. I mean, could you imagine if like 2018 offseason? I'm sorry, AJ. ALCS just isn't good enough. We're going to have to show you the door. Sorry. Yeah, good luck in your next spot. Could you imagine that bullshit? So Rangers, you're just FUBAR at this point.
Yep, you're absolutely right. They are a joke and a travesty and have been since at least 2017 when they wouldn't swap home series after Hurricane Harvey. All right, Scott, my horse's ass is Nick Caserio. We've talked before. We talked when it was happening. The strategy this offseason with the offensive line was fucking ridiculous. Instead of spending the available cap space and money that you had on like 1 or 2 good quality offensive linemen who can come in and make an impact, they went to like the bargain fucking $5 DVD bin at Walmart and bought like all the DVDs, right? And sometimes you get lucky and you get Uncle Buck and it's great. And that's how I got my Uncle Buck DVD, was in the $5 Walmart bin. But more times than not, it's fucking Lego Movie Part 19 and it's garbage. And lo and behold, Nick Caserio came up with one of the Lego movies here, and Cam Robinson, you paid $10 million to swap a late round pick. CJ Gardner-Johnson, you did zero research on like the character issues that the teams that he's been on has had with him, or you just thought he was a great, I don't know what your process was there, but that was a very expensive miss. Stephon Diggs had 2 years on his deal when you traded for him and gave up a second round pick. You decided just to make it a 1-year deal, convert a shit ton of that fucking money to a bonus, and then he gets a torn ACL. He's out of here after 3 or 4 games, and I'm sure he's enjoying life up in New England. You, as you mentioned, Kenyon Green, starting left guard. Here you go. That was fucking terrible. You have made this team into, again, New England South, which is what we tried to get away from with Bill O'Brien, right? But here we are again with Nick Caley getting hired, New England ties. Our offensive line coach has New England ties. Like, everybody has fucking New England ties. Like, if you don't have Tom Brady, what's the fucking point of replicating what they did in New England? You got a guy named CJ Stroud who's a special quarterback in his own right. Surround him with the type of coaches that make his talents great. Stop trying to fit a square peg into a round hole and making everybody into the next Tom Brady. And let's find a way to get a coach in here that understands what makes CJ great and allow him to do those things. Because that's what makes Andy Reid a great coach, right? He's given a guy in in Patrick Mahomes, and he said, hey, here's this guy's talents. Let me drop an offense that fits him. When he had Donovan McNabb in Philadelphia, he said, hey, here's a guy with some special talents. Let me drop an offense to fit him. If Patrick Mahomes goes to the Bears and Mitchell Trubisky goes to the Chiefs, do you think Trubisky's the one with the special career? Because I do. Coaching matters, right? And Mahomes going to Andy Reid was the perfect pairing. We need that guy for CJ, and continually to try and find guys who will make him the next Tom Brady isn't going to do it.
But Tim, Kenyon Green is
back.
He's back.
That's not a good thing. That's not a good thing.
Back, baby. He's on the practice squad. He's ready. He's ready to go. He said he learned a lot, by getting cut. So, I'm sure it's just going to turn right around for him, and he's going to become, the best guard that ever lived. But yeah, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of things I don't understand. And the other thing another New England crap that you haven't mentioned is the whole and Bill O'Brienism is can never trust a rookie. Can never trust a rookie. You can't play them.
Yet we draft them in the second round and guarantee their contract for the first time in the history of the NFL, setting off a chain of events that the rest of owners are pissed about. You were so high on this guy, but you can't fucking count on him.
You got to redshirt him. He's got to have a red shirt here, Tim.
All right, Scott, let's tip a cap. Who do you have for us this week?
All right, so I'm going to go with a combination of new media / foreign media. Because what we need right now, whenever you are dealing with fascism, which is absolutely what we're dealing with, you need truth tellers. And Tim and I are both, proud contributors to Substack. Of course, Tim hasn't written an article lately, but we're obviously putting this podcast on Substack, so we are contributors. And I'm writing not as much as I used to, but I'm trying to get in at least 1 or 2 articles a week because, quite frankly, I get tired of saying the same thing over and over again. So I'm trying to find new angles, to look at things. But thank God that we've got people willing to tell the truth, because I don't know if you saw how the foreign press was treating the UN meetings and the UN.
Not great.
It was more.
Well, it depends on. I think it was great.
The coverage was a little different than what you saw. And my favorite one, I'm not going to label them as a scumbag, but there was a article that brought back by The Hill. I don't know if you've seen that publication.
I have, yeah.
So The Hill, and the headline is Kamala Harris erroneously claims that Donald Trump would put his own troops on his own people. That one aged like milk. I mean, can they issue an apology after that one? Because what's he doing, Tim?
Exactly that.
He's doing exactly that. And it's just, yeah. And then, of course, you got Fox News covering Escalator Gate. It's just maddening. Get away from corporate media, folks. Get your news somewhere else. Substack's a terrific spot, but there are other terrific sources of independent media. People who are at least willing to sit there and say, this is what I'm seeing, and nobody's going to scare me away from saying it.
No, I agree with you on that. I, at this point, do not get any of my news from mainstream sources. I am a combination of Substack or just following these writers directly on their platforms that they choose to put out content. So well said there. All right. I am going to tip a hat to a combination of Team Europe and Roy McIlroy. I'll get to the second half of why in a little bit, but Roy took a beating verbally, emotionally, whatever you want to say, during the Ryder Cup. And I know he got some heat for how he reacted, but I loved it. I absolutely loved him turning to the fans and flipping them bird, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. I loved it. I loved it because if you can give it, you have to be able to take it, right? And Roy took it, and he took it, and he gave it out, and he played better because of it. I think I am a big enough fan of the game to tip my hat to good golf, right? I think you are as well, Scott. Like, they fucking made putts, and they fucking came to play. They played the little mind games you need to play to win a Ryder Cup, and Team USA continues to be ineffective in the Ryder Cup. So I tip my cap to Roy McIlroy and to Team Europe.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a good call. You know, they dominated pretty much the whole weekend. There was that, you know, how do you get a half point when you basically?
I'll get to that. I'll get to that.
I'm still trying to figure that one out. It's almost like Rodney Dangerfield, remember from Caddyshack? I broke my arm. I broke my arm. That means the bet's over. It's over. And they're like, no, it doesn't work that way. Does not work that way.
All right, Scott. Time for our final but favorite award. It is our scumbag of the week. Scott, who do you have for us this week?
I have the aforementioned commander-in-chief. I shudder to call him that. It's, you know, it's all perfectly well and good for you to embarrass yourself here. You know, it's kind of like family, Tim. You ever had like a Thanksgiving or Christmas get together where you had, you know, some extended family that made an ass out of themselves?
I would bet if you ask my family, I'm probably that guy who goes on the diatribes. But yeah, I'm sure it exists.
Well, not I mean, you know, a diatribe, but I'm just saying, like, just, you know, just generally makes an ass out of themselves. And you know, every family has that guy. And to me, the United States is like a family. We have that guy who makes an ass out of himself on a daily basis. But what you don't do, Tim, is you don't go outside the family and you don't make an ass out of yourself to people outside the family. And that's what he did when he made his UN speech. Now, obviously, the thing what he did this week with Senator Keckstand, I mean, not Secretary Keckstand. I'm sorry, Pete Hegseth. I sometimes get that mixed up. Where they're basically telling the generals, you know, we're removing the shackles from you. You can use American citizens as target practice. Oh, that sounds hunky-dory. Are they going to use like the rubber bullets? Are they going to do that, Tim? That sounds like fun. You want to go out and have soldiers shoot at you in rubber bullets? Does that sound like an entertaining thing that you want to do on the weekend? You know, I'm going to go to the farmer's market. Oh, shit, here comes the military. They're going to, you know, mow down this farmer's market because, you know, there might be an uprising. But it's over the top, you know, calling up the Secretary General of, I demand to find out who shut that escalator down. I want you to launch an investigation. I mean, how embarrassing. Have you ever come up on an escalator, Tim, that wasn't working?
All the time.
Did you say, it's not fair. It's not working. It's not fair. It's a conspiracy. It's a conspiracy. No, dipshit. You walk up the stairs. That's what you
do. And also, the escalator didn't work because his own team fucked it up. Like, that's a whole other.
But I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit. Why are we, you know, oh, Melania might have been killed. How?
That's pretty great. Melania might have been killed.
I mean, and
if anyone could have died, it would have been the fat fuck who eats nothing but fast food all the time.
And then sit there and make that speech where he's just talking to every country about how, you know, how pitiful and stupid they are and how they're going to hell and all this, that, and the other. And then you have mainstream media, brilliant speech. Really? Really? Every other nation in the world's going like, what in the fuck was that? And like I said, Jeff Tiedrick has said on his Substack, the first reporter that stands up and says, what in the fuck is wrong with you, gets a lifetime Pulitzer.
Somebody should do it. I can't wait. And I'm not going to make that my scumbag of the week because I was trying to keep it sports related this week. But there's one other thing that I want to add to what you said. There's one phrase specifically that has me really, 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 really fucking scared. I don't know if you caught it. He used the phrase "the enemy from within"
Yep.
during that speech.
Yep, he did.
That is the biggest fascist dog whistle in the entire world. You have to constantly have an enemy from within that you're fighting for fascism to work. He claimed that it was immigrants when this thing first started, but now it's the radical left, right? After this whole Charlie Kirk thing, and with everything that you said about releasing the military on our citizens, I'm really scared, really, really scared for where things are going right now.
Absolutely. And when you talk about radical left, that's us, Tim.
Yeah, no, it's us. We're not radical at all. We're just normal people who don't want to live in an authoritarian government.
But we are left.
Yeah, but I don't think, loving human beings is radical. But that's just me. It's just me. All right, Scott. My scumbag this week is America in every single way that has to do with the Ryder Cup. First, let's talk about picking Keegan Bradley as a captain. It was a fucking cop-out, and it was bullshit. You took advantage of an emotional scene on a Netflix show that showed Keegan Bradley being upset that he wasn't chosen. So then you make him a captain before he probably should have been, because he's still playing great, amazing golf and was one of the top 12 point scorers this year. So instead of being able to choose himself one of the top 12 golfers in America, he has to pick somebody else who's not a top 12 golfer. So that takes away one of the better golfers that you can have. And again, because he's playing the PGA Tour, not really able to be the captain in the same way that a guy who's retired from the game would be. Then let's go to the fact that, when Europe hosts things, they assign spots on the range, right? When it was in Rome, they actually put Team USA right by the press pool, so they had to walk by all the cameras, and anytime someone left, all the cameras went off. It was a little bit of gamesmanship. What does Team USA do? They assign nothing. No, hit wherever you want. So what does Team Europe do? They get there a little bit before Team USA, and they go right fucking smack dab in the middle of the range, forcing Team USA to split up into two parts and go to each different side. They couldn't have figured out how that would have happened. Then, after everything plays out, the name in the envelope comes up, right? And, Victor Hovland got hurt, so they had to pull a name in the envelope. It was Harrison Swafford, Harrison English, so he doesn't get to play. It's a rule. It is what it is. It's been the fucking rule for 100 plus years. It is what it is. If there's an injury, there's always a name put ahead of time. You pull that name, that's the match that doesn't happen. If you didn't get your fucking ass taken out back and beaten like motherfucking crazy, you wouldn't have been in a position where on Sunday you need a goddamn fucking miracle and you're worried about a half point. I get it, but at the same time, you put yourself in a terrible position. Now, finally, let's talk about the fans, because this was an embarrassment. If you and I were out there, I think you and I would have been ashamed as American golf fans, because this is not what we would ever want to put out there as hey, welcome to America, Rory, or, Bobby McIntyre or Shane Lowry or any of these guys, right? It's not, there's a difference between ribbing and being a giant piece of shit. And to me, Scott, the people who were doing this are essentially the drunk fucking jackasses who get bleacher seats in Yankee Stadium. Maybe I'm wrong, but to me, you can't tell me the difference of anybody who's out there throwing beers at Rory McIlroy's wife, talking about extramarital affair rumors, calling Robert McIntyre a fat fuck, doing the things that they were doing. That's not heckling. That's not golf. That's being a fucking asshole.
Yeah, and then I saw, I don't know if you saw Paul Azinger's comments after the fact. I used to like Paul Azinger, operative word being used to. To me, as a golf fan, and we've talked about this before, I would rather watch a guy beat somebody 66 to 67 than watch some guy blow his wad and shoot an 80. To me, that's not fun. It's not fun to watch somebody, watch their dreams, watch their hopes just completely dashed because they blow it. I would rather watch great golf and have my team lose by one stroke because the other team was just a little bit better. That's the kind of golf, I don't know about you, Tim, but I see enough hooks and slices in my own game. I don't want to go and watch the pros hook it and slice it. I want to see great golf shots. That's why I go to PGA Tour events. I want to see guys do things I can't do. I can hook it into the water just fine. I don't need to see, I don't need to heckle a guy and scream in the middle of his swing so that he can hook it in the water. That's not enjoyable.
But this is what happens when number one, location is New York, right? Number two, alcohol is involved. Number three, it's a event with country at stake. And so people who are not golf fans show up to these things because you can root on Team USA. And again, it's New York. So it's like the fucking bleacher bums is really what it was. So I think it was just a really, really poor showing for American golf. If I was out there, like I know I personally would have like been trying to shut people the fuck up, right? Because again, I've been at baseball games. I'll heckle a guy. Like I called Sammy Sosa corky after the bat incident. Like there's a difference between good-natured heckling and being an asshole, right? Like you and I both know there's a line. You don't talk about like marital affair rumors on the golf course, and you definitely don't throw a beer at someone's wife. Rory McIlroy's wife was hit with a canned beer, like not even a cup, a fucking can.
Yeah, I don't even know why you're serving that stuff, when it can be a projectile. Every time I've gone to a sporting event, they open it for you. They don't let you bring a closed can.
I mean, it was opened, but like still there's alcohol in it, right? And like you get to the point now where like in a lot of events where not only do they open it for you, they pour it into the cup ahead of times for you. And you sit there and you're like, why can't I just have it in the can? Well, it's fucking assholes like this that are the reason that you just can't have your beer in the container that it came in, which happens to also be a cup if you would just let me use it that way. But I think that's all I have this week, Scott. I don't want to sit there and harp on it too much. But it was, I guess, just frustrating to see our nation continue to be a laughing stock when it comes to being hospitable to other people.
Absolutely.
All right. That's about all we have for everybody this week. We appreciate all who joined us. We apologize. We went long on that Astros segment, but hey, we won't have Astros to talk for a little bit, so we can get in depth on the Texans next week. And Rockets training camp is heating up. The press photos and all that stuff started coming out today. So we'll have plenty to talk about between the Texans and the Rockets next week.
All right.
We'll see everybody. Same bad time, same bad channel. This is Born on the Bayou Sports.